Centre, we're very excited to be co-hosting this event with the Dutch Embassy. We're especially excited that embassies in Pretoria are starting to recognize the important and necessary role that traditional leaders play in governance and security. I'm not very good at protocol, I'm afraid, but want to acknowledge and thank Ambassador Han Peters for his support of this event and its larger vision. And generally, it's been an incredibly positive experience working with the Dutch Embassy around this, so thank you for that. And I also want to acknowledge Queen Damase, King Khoisan, and all the other esteemed traditional leaders in our midst, many of whom hold positions of influence at the National House, at the Provincial House, Controlesa, and of course, most importantly, within your communities. I also want to welcome all our other guests from government departments, civil society organizations, and academic departments. Thank you so much for being with us today. And finally, I want to acknowledge Nkosi Noka Kajumba, who was the first traditional leader we as a research team from the university worked with in the Mthatha area of the Eastern Cape, first in 2019 and then for a longer period of time last year. Nkosi Jumba has supported our ongoing research on the role of women traditional leaders in conflict resolution, governance and security throughout, and was instrumental in assisting us in putting together this event. So thank you, Nkosi Nokaka. You're such an inspiration to me personally, and part of the inspiration of the purpose of this event. So this brings me to the purpose of our dialogue, which is to deepen our understanding of the gender-based violence crisis in South Africa in relation to the women, peace and security agenda, and as an urgent peace and security concern, and the role of women traditional leaders in addressing the issue in collaboration with other stakeholders in the face of insurmountable challenges. The Women, Peace and Security agenda encompasses the global efforts towards promoting the full, equal and meaningful participation of women in peace processes. Within the United States, within the United Nations architecture, this agenda is situated with the UN Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, UNSCR 1325, which I think most of us are familiar with, was developed to support this agenda, as well as South Africa's National Action Plan, which champions the principles of the UNSCR 1325 by enabling the meaningful participation for women in peace processes and prioritizing their needs, experiences, and agency in all conflict and non-conflict situations. I want to stress that the South African National Action Plan is concerned with the meaningful participation of women in peace processes in conflict and non-conflict context, as it's easy to assume that because we are not a country at war, the women, peace and security agenda doesn't apply to us. Although we're not a country at war, we see levels of community and gender-based violence that are comparable to countries at war and need urgent addressing. The Women, Peace and Security agenda is not simply about protecting women during periods of direct conflict. It is about radically rethinking security as being about inclusivity and diversity and the transformation of violent communities into communities of peace. And building peace at the national and regional level requires the transformation of communities at the grassroots. In terms of transforming communities at the grassroots, we understand traditional leaders to be a critical actor. Traditional leaders are the backbone of the rural and peri-urban landscape of our country and continent, not only in facilitating the delivery of essential services in many cases to millions of people, but also in ensuring peace and security, including in relation to GBV. Within this, women traditional leaders in particular are taking a leading role. And our conversation at the breakfast this morning, a number of us had breakfast with the ambassador, and it became so clear as the women were speaking about their role in their communities, that women are taking a leading role in our country in relation to this. Women traditional leaders at every level have been working to address the GBV crisis, but are really rarely seen as critical actors in the Women, Peace and Security agenda. In addition, traditional leaders, and especially women traditional leaders, continue to face an array of challenges in undertaking their work. We know that some of these challenges are a result of extreme resource constraint, despite the best efforts on the part of municipalities, government departments, and traditional leaders working cooperatively. But from our time spent undertaking research in the Eastern Cape, and to a less extent KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, and Mpumalanga, we also suspect that some of these challenges arise due to problems of coordination and communication between stakeholders. It's in this regard that we as the Centre for Mediation in Africa, and through this event with the Dutch Embassy, want to play a role. We hope that this day will offer a safe space for dialogue between stakeholders, where we can start to identify where the challenges lie and how to improve coordination and communication between stakeholders. Many interventions, as we know, have been planned and some attempted, but they're often not sustainable because of a breakdown of communication between stakeholders. So today we're not that keen on developing big, bold ideas, coming up with big solutions that might never see the light of day. We don't want to be in another talk shop where we try and come up with these great resolutions that never get implemented. We want to delve a little deeper to understand why some of the excellent ideas at the policy level aren't implemented at the grassroots. What are the barriers to implementation? Where are the problem areas? Are there things that we can shift or realign in terms of our relationship between stakeholders so that solutions can actually be implemented effectively and sustainably? We also want to think very carefully about the role of women traditional leaders in the women, peace and security agenda and in achieving South Africa's NAP on UNSCR 1325. If you consider that traditional leaders have influence over a very large constituency across South Africa, then we need to include them in our efforts to achieve the NAP and think very carefully what their position in that will be. Some people feel like these kinds of talk shops are a waste of time, but we hope that we can go beyond talking about things at a superficial level to really being honest about the challenges we face, really hearing each other and really finding each other, as it were. We envision this to be the first of a series of dialogues that will help to build bridges between us and perhaps even lead to developing a network of stakeholders dedicated to building peace at every level of society. In ending, I want to stress that a good dialogue is a messy dialogue. We're okay with things being messy today. We have you sitting around a table to encourage dialogue, messy dialogue, honest dialogue, difficult dialogue about the challenges that we face. As a team, we've worked hard to design the day in such a way that it would hopefully create a safe space in which understanding, listening, and really hearing one another can take place. Our assumption is that we improve the dialogue between us, then we can work more meaningfully towards a solution. But if we focus on the solution without good dialogue, without the ability to really hear one another, the solutions are more likely to fail.